Jumping back into The Chosen Season 1, Episode 6. This is one of my favorite episodes. I think it's one of the best episodes of Season 1 in particular. Of course, we get the introduction of Tamar and some other characters, Ethan, the paralytic. But we're going to look at a section right before then where we actually see Jesus and the crew at Zebedee's house, and they're having a conversation about what's kind of going on. We see Jesus begin to build this following of people listening to him teach. But we're going to kind of go through this section here and see what's happening and how does it get to that point, and talk about some interesting things. For example, the genealogy of Jesus, and why is this such an important piece of this episode. So let's jump in here. Here we go.
Salome didn't cook?
No.
Walnuts?
So good.
Oh yeah, herbs are.
So throughout the entire series, we see that Salome's cooking is very good. Salome, of course, is the mother of James and John, the wife of Zebedee, and she is a great cook. She's by far the best cook in the show, it seems like, and she makes some amazing different stuff later on in further seasons that people always rave about. However, here we're already seeing that even Simon Peter is already seeing here that he's missing Salome's cooking for this little get together here in the house. Now we did meet Salome earlier. I skipped over this little part, but we did meet Salome earlier for the first time as Jesus comes to Capernaum with the boys after coming back from the wedding in Cana. And so she meets him for the first time, and we get a little bit of foreshadowing for what Salome could do in the future, in scripture at least, where she kind of pushes her boys to be more of a front-running couple in the apostles here, where they are to be more important, kind of. In scripture, she tells them, I want you to ask Jesus to be on your left and right? And so she actually is there in front of Jesus and says, I want my boys to be at your left and right in your kingdom and have this authority, right? And of course, this is not the best thing to ask because it's asked with the wrong heart. And anyway, so let's continue on with this scene. Let's see what they talk about here as they jump into this section.
They're beautiful. Rosemary, dill.
Mint, coriander, and sage for Zebedee's indigestion.
Thank you for sharing that, dear wife. So, your father was a fisherman?
Carpenter.
Is he back in Nazareth?
No, he's in heaven.
So his father was a carpenter. Jesus kind of follows that trade. Now, the word for carpenter in Hebrew during this time, or in Greek during that time, it's less of what we think of as a carpenter. It's more of a builder. So a carpenter for us is someone that just works with wood primarily. However, during this time, a carpenter would have been someone who worked with both wood and stone and built a lot of different things. You have to understand, in Israel, there's not that many trees. Like in the Galilee area, there's a good amount. But generally, everywhere else in Israel, there's really not that many trees all over the place. Wood is not an abundant resource that they would have used for buildings and different things. They would have used it for some stuff, yes, but the buildings, for example, would look a lot less than what you're seeing here, and they would look like black basalt stone. There's volcanic stone literally everywhere in the Galilee area, especially where they are here. And so every house would be made of these kind of, medium-sized boulders or medium-sized rocks that you would pile up on top of one another in a square configuration. And so that's how the houses were built throughout the time of Jesus. You can see them in Israel even today. However, it's interesting to talk about here. Secondarily, in this section, we also hear that Joseph is dead. This is obviously an interesting thing in scripture, because in scripture, we don't really hear too much about Joseph overall past the birth of Jesus. There's not really any stories of Jesus as a child where we hear about Joseph, even to the point where whenever Mary goes to find Jesus in Jerusalem, Joseph isn't really there during that story whenever Jesus is 12 years old. And so we don't really see a ton of that here, right? We don't know when Joseph dies in this line, but it's kind of implied throughout all of scripture, since he's not mentioned even once, that he did die sometime in between Jesus' birth and his ministry, essentially. And so we don't actually know what happened, but of course, the most common answer is that he died somewhere before then. So that's what we're seeing here with Jesus.
What was your father's lineage?
Josiah, father of Jeconiah at the time of the exile.
But before the exile, what tribe?
Abba.
I like genealogies. It's what we talk about.
I would imagine from the tribe of Judah? Yes.
And why would you guess the tribe of Judah?
So this is a great line of questioning here from the Zebedees, okay? So we get Zebedee asking basically what his genealogy is, what's like, who is his family from, right? What is he doing here? He's not just asking because he wants to ask, but he's asking specifically because he's trying to fish out more information about Jesus. Because if he's a false teacher, if he's a false prophet, if he's a false Messiah, they want to know this now. Because if he is from the tribe of Levi, for example, or from the tribe of Benjamin, or from the tribe of Joseph, whatever it is, then he is not the true Messiah, because they knew that the Messiah would come from the tribe of Judah. And so that is what Jesus' lineage comes from. It's from the line of David. It's from the line of Judah. It's from that lineage of people. Knowing your lineage is a massively important thing for Jews, even all the way till today. They still go back and find their lineages connected to all of these tribes previously. And it's super important that they see that in their lives and how they operate and what they do. For example, if there ever is, well, when there is another temple built, the third temple in Israel, only the Levites will be able to be priests in that temple, right? So we have to know who are the Levites in order to have them fulfill these certain roles. So it's a really interesting thing that we don't really get into as, at least as Americans, we don't really think about our ancestry too much. And like it doesn't play too much of a part in our lives. We're kind of more individualized for sure. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you want to help us out to create more videos just like this, there's a few things that you could do to help. The best free way is to just watch our videos. If you can watch the rest of this video and then maybe even go watch another video after that, that'll tell YouTube that we're the best channel on the platform, and it'll really, really help. If you want to go above and beyond and help us financially to consistently help us make more videos, the best way to do that is through snipesupport.com. You can pledge $5, $10, or $25 a month and get a bunch of extra content that doesn't really go anywhere else. For example, our full live streams. The video that you're watching right now is a part of a live stream, but you can get the full live stream without any cuts or edits or anything over on patreon.com or snipesupport.com. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Thank you so much for your support.
Well, are you having a party?
We've heard voices.
Mara, please come in.
Rabbi, these are our neighbors, Mara and Eliel.
So here we meet Mara and Eliel. Oh wait, we've already met Mara and Eliel. These are the parents of Abigail.
We've heard about you.
Have you?
The parable of the net. I have a question about that.
Please.
So here is Mara. Mara is interesting because this confused me so much because it's never mentioned in the show itself. But this woman is the sister of the woman who does Mary's hair in episode 2. Okay, or is teaching Mary how to braid hair in episode 2. Okay, so Mary is working in her salon basically, and she is helping Mary to get back on her feet and all that kind of stuff. That is not this woman. It's this woman's sister. But they look so similar that I would have never ever been able to tell that at all. It took Dallas texting me after I did the episode that this woman is a different woman, both in real life and in the show. But they look so similar, and they're sisters both in the show and in real life as well. But it's never really mentioned in the show at all for us to understand that. So just a little bit of an Easter egg there from the super kind of deep Chosen fan there as we talk about that. But I love Mara and Eliel as they kind of talk through what's going on here.
Our master is tired. He's had a long day of walking.
It's all right. It's all right.
You said angels would come and separate the evil from the righteous.
So she's asking about the parable that he talked about before, the parable of the nets, where angels would come and they would separate the evil from the righteous. And so now she's wanting more clarification on that. You'll notice here that you could exchange this person for Abigail and they're basically the same character, right? Like, she just keeps on asking question after question after question. That's exactly where Abigail gets it from. And I love seeing that family resemblance there in the acting.
How soon do you think that they would come, Rabbi?
My friends and I recently returned from a wedding. The father of the bride was a man of great wealth, Abner. As the night got longer, near the end of the feast, what do you think the servants were doing back home?
Waiting. If they're good at their jobs.
Waiting where? rooms? In the kitchen?
At the gate.
I love this example. There are not many times in The Chosen where we just have a moment where it's just like totally casual conversation, and then Jesus immediately kind of pulls into a parable, but the conversation kind of continues, right? Generally what we have with Jesus when he's kind of doing this, and they do a great job with it throughout the rest of The Chosen, but I think this example, especially as one of our first of kind of showing this, like Jesus is not, up in front of people teaching. He's not on a stage, right? Like the Sermon on the Mount. He's not particularly trying to teach a specific message at all. He's just responding to someone talking to him, which is what I believe Jesus would have done all of the time throughout his ministry, right? We would have seen Jesus just having conversation. And within those conversations, he thinks, oh yeah, this is a great story to kind of get across my point of what I'm talking about. Jesus was an amazing communicator. And so here, as he's talking to Mara, not only is he talking to Mara, but now it has become a lesson for the entire room to kind of get in on and have this conversation with. I love the writing here because it just feels so natural, kind of getting into this parable here.
At the gate. Doing what? Just standing there in the dark?
Holding lamps.
But why? Why wouldn't they just relax?
At the end of Matthew 24, before we get to Luke 12, there's a lot of this different section where basically Jesus says, hey, there's going to come a time where I'm coming back, right? And he says, no one knows the day or the hour of this, when the end will come, right? And so this is really, really important, because this shows us that there is at least one thing that Jesus does not know. This is one of the main verses throughout Scripture that shows us that Jesus, in his humanity, actually does not know at least one thing. And so if Jesus does not know one thing, there are other things that he could have prevented himself from knowing as well. He willingly got rid of the knowledge that he once had, right? Or that he had, that he could have had at one point as being God, right? And so he chose being God, something not to be clung to, as we see in the scriptures, and he chooses not to know about the day or the hour when he will return, okay, or when the end will come. So we see that in chapter 24. Now in chapter 25 of Matthew, he gives us this parable of the 10 virgins, which is very similar, which I originally thought is what he was talking about here, but going back to Luke chapter 12, this is really what he's talking about in this section here. So again, this is a different context than what we're seeing in The Chosen, but the purpose of it stays true here, talking about the end and talking about when that end will come. Mara is concerned with being ready, essentially, for when that separation will take place. Will she be put in the good pile or the bad pile, right? So we see this: stay dressed for action and keep your lamps burning, and be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast, so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes home and knocks. Blessed are those servants who the master finds awake when he comes. Truly, I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at the table, and he will come and serve them. He comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them, if he comes in the second watch or the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You also must be ready. The Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So no one will know the day or the hour, right? And so it's a really interesting thing here. Peter then chimes in here in the scriptures and he says, Lord, are you telling this parable for us all, for us or for all? So is this just for the 12 of us, or is this for everybody? Who then is the faithful and the wise manager whom his master will set over his household to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that servant says to himself, my master is delayed in coming, and begins to beat the male and female servants and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and an hour that he does not know, and he will cut him in pieces and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required, and from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. So a lot of stuff in that section there, but we're seeing how Jesus is using this this moment here, and you're going to hear from Barnaby as well as he kind of chimes in and tells a piece of this parable without actually telling a piece of this parable here as well. But Jesus is saying essentially nobody knows when the master will return, when the end times will come, when, in our case, whenever Jesus will return, right? And so we have to be ready for these things as we're going through them.
Because they don't know when he's coming back.
Suppose they figured the master was delayed in coming. So they took a nap on his bed, got drunk on his wine, and let their lamps burn down.
That's easy. They would be fired and then kicked out, called a name, and told that if they ever show their face around here again...
My friends...
So Barnaby's joking here, but he's right to an extent, right? In the scriptures, it's probably a little bit more harsh, where they would be cut into pieces and punished and beaten up, right? Barnaby says they should be kicked out and called a name. So a little bit more lenient from Barnaby.
Shalom, shalom.
We were just passing by and heard a familiar voice.
We heard about the wedding. Can you do that to the well by my house?
You know them?
Yes, Mary introduced them to me.
It's the ground. Why not?
You were saying, teacher?
Ah, yes, thank you, James. The servants. So it will be, at the end of all things. Neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son of Man, nor the day or the hour, but only the Father.
So this is why I was kind of confused on the different sections here. I don't think that section appears in Luke 12, at least here where we're seeing this. So he's talking about this parable here, but we hear, in Matthew 24, like nobody knows the day or the hour, not even the Son of Man, right? And so having that understanding, they're kind of combining some different verses here, which they often do, especially when they're telling parables in The Chosen itself. Now we get a little bit of a moment where the boys are concerned about what's going on, and Jesus continues to teach. Later on, we hear a little bit of snippets of what he does teach throughout the rest of this area here, but we don't really hear much. One of the other parables that we hear is the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee, which is really interesting because Matthew is here while he's teaching that portion, which is really, really unique. You don't hear much of it, but it's kind of in the background as other things are happening throughout. And then, of course, Jesus also dealing with all the paralytic stuff, which is what we're going to talk about next. So anyway, let me know your thoughts about this section. What do you think about Jesus' genealogy? What do you think about him teaching through this section with the parables and how The Chosen handles parables overall? Do you think it's well done? I do. I think it's very well done throughout the rest of the show. And of course, we're going to talk about much more than just these few parables we've seen so far. So anyway, leave a comment down below, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.